when I was 18. My mom was killed in an accident. And she was my best friend. We were two peas in a pod. That took the wind out of my sails and really changed my world. My mom was only in her early 40s when she was killed. And my dad died just a few years after. It felt like everything was taken from me. I was an orphan. I never really had my own chance to grieve through all of it because there was so much building on, building on. You're entitled to be angry. You're entitled to be sad. You're entitled to all of your feelings, but we heal when we feel, and we can't heal what we can't feel. Grief is an ongoing process. It's a journey, but it's not looking for some end to that journey. It's something we deal with and something we learn to live with. And I tell people we don't have to learn to live with the loss. We have to learn to live with the love our loved ones leave behind. And I feel like that's what I've learned over the years is learning to live with that love that she left behind.
Hello and welcome to Healing Millions podcast. Today, I have an honor, privilege to have an amazing guest on my show, Marie Bailey. She is a grief counselor and she's going to talk about how to heal after losing your loved ones. Marie, thank you so much for being on my show. Thank you so much for the work you do. I'm so excited about this episode. Welcome to Healing Millions podcast.
Thank you so much, Nina, for having me. I'm honored to be here. It's the first time I've ever been on a podcast or anything. So it's a privilege to be here, and I know with you, it's going to be great.
Thank you so much. I have an honor to have the first ever interview with you, and I feel so excited about this because today we are going to talk about healing after losing our loved ones. What are the first steps? Grief is really hard to overcome on your own because, it comes in layers and it comes in waves, and it's so hard sometimes. And I know so many people out there lost their loved ones and they need help. And that's why I brought you today on my show to share your experience as a grief counselor to help our audience heal after losing their loved ones. So before we dive into how you can help people, I really want to know, how did you become grief counselor? What is the journey?
My journey is what got me here, and it's a long story, but I feel like I've been grieving my whole life. I started when I was 5 years old, and my baby sister died. And I remember as clearly as it was yesterday, seeing the devastation that it caused my parents, my big, strong dad that I thought could do anything. He was my idol. And it was the first time I'd ever seen him cry. So that was, for me, of course, I was too young to understand at 5 what it really meant, but I wasn't too young to understand what sadness it brought to the house, and now the tears from everyone. And so I think that started me on a lifelong journey of understanding what grief and loss and sadness was all about. And at that age, I think I took it on myself to be, I didn't want to see my dad cry again. So it took it on myself to make sure that there was no reason for him to have tears, or at that age, that's how I felt. And I became the funny one in the family, because that would ensure that my dad, there'd be no tears. But that was naive to what life was about to bring. And then we lost I lost two other sisters before I was 10 years old. And seeing that devastation again, was the loss from my parents was incredible. And then, but nothing prepared me through all of that, but nothing prepared me for having the rug pulled out from underneath me when I was 18. And my mom was killed in an accident. and she was my best friend. We were two peas in a pod, and that took the wind out of my sails and really changed my world. It changed everything about my world. But but even that never prepared me for something I've never ever shared hardly with anybody before, was the loss of my own child. And that was yeah, that was when that's a whole other kind of grief. And then my dad was my rock, and my mom was only in her early 40s when she was killed, and my dad was my rock, and he died just a few years after. So it was everything. It felt like everything was taken from me. I was an orphan. I never really had my own chance to grieve through all of it, because there was so much building on. And there's been many other losses over the years since that. And I used to think for the longest time that my family was cursed in some way, that something, there had to be some bad karma somewhere to bring this on us. And I understand better now that, death is random and it's a part of life. But all of that is what brought me to doing the work I do today, is because through all of that, that showed me how to be more compassionate, how to be more kind, and how to have a better understanding of what people go through when they are grieving, and what loss feels like. So that, in a nutshell, a very shortened version of my story, is why I do what I do and why I'm here doing that.
Thank you, Marie, for sharing your story so openly. I'm sorry you had to go through all these challenges, but very often we don't understand obstacles that life put on us, and we don't understand why things are happening the way they are happening, but it really serves the higher purpose and to really help us live our soul purpose. Everything prepared you to do the work you're doing right now. And for somebody who isn't listening to this podcast episode and doesn't really know what means grief counselor, can you please explain what does it really mean, and what is the difference to, for example, to therapy, other coaching modalities? Can you explain a little bit about that?
I've been a counselor my whole life. A counselor is a counselor, and helps people deal with issues in their lives. The difference with a grief counselor is that a grief counselor helps people um, deal with the challenges that come from the intense emotions that come from grief, from loss. A grief counselor is someone that allows you the space to talk about your feelings, to get these emotions out, and in particular to validate your loss. Something that when we go through a loss and when we're grieving, one of the things that we want the most is we want our loss to be acknowledged, and we want our loss to be validated. And that is extremely important. So a grief counselor is someone who takes that time with you to acknowledge that loss, and allow you the space that you need to get those feelings out, and gives you the permission to have those feelings where you don't always get that. The difference in a grief counselor and therapy is, and both can be a lot the same as well. They override each other, but a grief counselor helps you in the storm. Let me put it in a way that maybe makes some sense to me. A grief counselor helps you in the immediate storm, helps you to see things the way they are. A therapist can take that over many a longer period of time. But so those would be, for me, the major differences, is that grief is in the moment. It's now, it's what you're dealing with, and therapy can go longer. I, I think that's the easiest way for me to explain what it is for me.
Thank you so much for the explanation. In your new book, Daughter Without Mothers, you share openly your experience, how it was for you to grow without mother. For somebody who is listening to this interview and going through some challenges, what are the biggest challenges people face when they lose their mothers, and how they can overcome those challenges? What is the best support for them at that moment?
I think, from my own point of view and my own perspective, some of the challenges I think that I went through, in retrospect, were probably self-imposed. Because some of the things for the longest time, I never wanted to talk about not having a mom. To me, there was a stigma attached to, for some reason, she had left me, and it said something about me that I didn't have a mom, that I didn't have guidance, that I was somehow, if someone knew that I didn't have a mom, they would think, that I'm some sort of a wild child that didn't have guidance from a mother, which is something that we really need. And so I seldom shared that with people. And one of the immediate and I think significant effects of having a mother is that a mother is that emotional support for a daughter. It's one of our, they say, one of our first friends and one of our best friends is our mom. And that emotional support, without that, we struggle with what I struggled with feelings of loneliness and abandonment. I struggled with that, or that deep sense of longing where you're not sure where you belong anymore. And those are real challenges for anyone that a daughter without her mother. And a lot of studies have shown that from a daughter without a mother and losing that attachment, if you want to get into the attachment theory, which we don't really want to, but studies have shown that people suffer from more depression, from anxiety, and et cetera, when you don't have a mother's guidance to fall back on. And I think what I suffered from as well was that sense of, because I now had to take care of myself, I rejected help from other people because I had to be the strong one. And so I think there are so many things um, that happen when you lose your mother. But I think it's overall is that sense of attachment and that sense of guidance and that sense of that longing that you never lose. I think I've been missing my mom my whole life. I've and I feel like that has affected so many things in my life, so many relationships, so many things. But it's yeah, it's an ongoing process. Grief is an ongoing process. It's a journey, but it's not looking for some end to that journey. It's just, it's something we deal with and something we learn to live with. And I tell people we don't have to learn to live with the loss. We have to learn to live with the love that our loved ones leave behind. And I feel like that's what I've learned over the years is learning to live with that love that she left behind.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful message. And for somebody who is listening to this interview and going through really, really hard time in their life, um, and they just lost their mother, they just lost their loved ones, what are the first steps they can take to help themselves?
Very first steps is to give yourself grace. Give yourself grace, because there is so many people in society. We want to say that grief is we have to go through all of these steps for grief. We have to go through, there's 5 stages of grief, and we're supposed to go through those. Society kind of dictates that, after 2 weeks, you should be feeling this way. After a month, you should be feeling this way, and all of that. But there's no magical formula, and there's nothing that I can directly say to someone who is just at a loss that's going to make, you know, that loss or feel any better. But allow yourself time to process it. Allow yourself time to feel the pain. allow yourself time. Be gentle with yourself. There's no right or wrong way to grieve, and don't ever allow anyone to tell you that there is. And the immediate say to people all the time, and for me, the immediate was just getting through one day at a time. Just getting through one day at a time. And even the impossible, even the normal day routine seems impossible when you're in the early stages of grief. So it's normal to feel numb. It's normal to not feel anything, and it's normal to feel angry, and it's normal to feel all of those feelings. But just give yourself the best advice I would give to anyone is give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. Give yourself time. Be kind to yourself. And don't be afraid to what I didn't do. Don't be afraid to reach out to family and reach out to friends and tell them that you need, you need some help. And only if it's in their presence. Only if you need someone in your presence. But don't be afraid or scared. It takes courage to do that, and it's not a weakness to reach out and ask for help.
During that process of grieving, what tools, what practices did you use to help yourself?
My goodness. For me personally, I think the one thing that I clung to, and I learned this very, very early in life, was my faith. My ability. I've always felt that there was more beyond this life. There was more beyond this. So my belief that I would see my loved ones again is what gave me the strength to get through it all. Now, I will tell you that I was not always on good terms with God, because after my mom died, God and I weren't on speaking terms for a long time. So, but that is my strongest, was doing that, was having that faith and knowing what I know in my heart, that there is a whole lot more than we know, and that I will see my loved ones again. That was what sustained me. I did not reach out and ask for help because I had too many other responsibilities on me. But had I, in retrospect, had I known what I know now, maybe my journey would not have been as tough as it was, because I would have reached out to people, and I encourage people to do that.
That's a beautiful message. I always say we heal together. And when you start sharing your story, you start healing. And that's the first step to healing. And for somebody who is listening to this interview and they just lost somebody, and everybody's telling them, just be strong, just keep moving. What would you say to them? And I always think this is really bad advice, because just keep moving, just be strong. It's really hard when your whole world is collapsing. It is really hard to even get out of your bed and do something, as you mentioned, like even normal, like everyday activities become very hard. So, what would you say to those people who are hearing, okay, just be strong, just, keep moving, everything will be fine?
Yes, I heard that so much after my mom died, and all it did was made me angry. It made me more angry and how often did I hear, "Oh, your mom wouldn't want you to be sad. Your mom would want you to be strong. You have to be strong for other people. You have to," and that never came from my dad to put that on me, but other people always put that on me. And what I would say to someone is never allow anyone to tell you how to grieve. Never allow anyone to tell you how to grieve. And the strength that is required in grief is pretending you're okay. It takes a lot of strength to pretend you're okay. And the real grieving starts when you know that you're not okay, and you start to grieve, and you're entitled to feel what you're feeling. You're entitled to be angry. You're entitled to be sad. You're entitled to all of your feelings. But we heal when we feel. and we can't heal what we can't feel. So in order to heal, we have to do that. And I always tell people that if you have 1,000 tears to shed, don't stop at 500. But just don't ever think that there's a weakness in reaching out for help. And don't think that having to be strong is how you get through grief, because that is not. And people are going to say what they're going to say. It's and that is the platitudes that come that make us angry. But understanding that your strength is getting from one day to the next. Your strength is for buttering your toast when you don't even feel like doing it. Your strength is in making yourself a cup of coffee. You're stronger than you realize until you're going through grief. But just don't allow any of those things that people say. Don't take them personal. And grieve in your own way. Grief is very personal, and nobody can tell you. Nobody has been through the grief that you're going through. Everybody's grief is different. So you are strong, and you're, like I said, your strength is in just getting from today to tomorrow. And that's all the strength that you need when you're grieving.
I love that. Never tell anybody how you should grieve, and don't listen to anybody. Very often people want to help. They really want to help and they want to be there for us when we're going through that process. Very often people don't know what to say and how
Absolutely.
to behave.
Yeah.
And very often people do wrong things at the wrong time. For somebody who is listening to this interview and maybe they have a friends, maybe they have family members who are going through this process, they want to help, but don't know how. What would you say to them?
The best thing to be for anyone that is going through, in particular in early grief, it's just to be there for them, just to be there. And don't assume that um you don't, not to speak of the person that has passed on. Don't or where you're not bringing that up, because we think, like you just said, Nina, people say things and they do the best they can, and some people think that not talking about the loss helps the person, where in my case, and many people feel this way, it works the opposite. You want to talk about your loved one. You want your don't think it's going to bring someone more pain, because they're probably already in the worst pain they have ever been in their lives. And that, so giving them a chance to talk things out is a gift in itself. So don't ever shut someone down that wants to talk about their grief, thinking that that's going to bring them more pain, because it couldn't possibly bring them more pain than they're already feeling. So just be there for them. And just I just read something that I loved this. It was a story about a little boy that his neighbor had lost his wife, and he was grieving, deeply grieving, and he was sitting on his porch, and there was a little boy, and his little boy went and sat with the man, and the mom said to him afterwards, "What did you say to the man when you went and sat with him?" And he said, "I didn't say anything to him. I just helped him cry." And I think that is just to be there for the person, sometimes you don't even need any words, just to be a presence.
I love that. I really love that story. I helped him cry because very often the hardest thing is really like to keep everything in yourself when you just want to cry. And you feel that people are going to judge you because you cry but you need to let it go. And I know you're writing your amazing book, Daughters Without Mothers. How did writing your book help you heal?
This book, that it's in its infancy now, is came from my original book that I'm completing now, called The Little White Box. And so when I was writing my story from the beginning, I think it gave me so much clarity, and I think writing the story gave me, if you would, permission to get the tears out that I never got out. And it felt like I was writing or reading a story from someone else's life. And as I was reading, or as I was typing the story, many tears flowed when I was writing my book and into my second book now. It gave me that permission, I think, that I needed to really feel the grief. But what it also did, because when I was looking at my story or looking at, as if I was looking at someone else's story through my eyes, and it gave me the ability to really feel the compassion for someone else that's going through the same thing. So it was incredibly, I think writing this book has been the most healing thing I have done for myself. I never really allowed a lot of the emotions to come out until I started writing this book. So I think for me it was, and now it has transitioned into, I never started to write about daughters without mothers. And I think that this is a natural progression. Now it's in its infancy, but I'm really hoping that my mom had a great sense of humor, and I have a great sense of humor, and that has sustained me a lot in my life as well. That's a tool for me that's been big. And so I'm writing this book, and I want to bring some humor into it, because not all relationships with anyone is perfect. We have, there's lots of things in relationships, and lots of funny things, so I want to bring some of that as well, of things that were and things that could have been, and I want to bring it to honor my mom and all the love she left behind, and what the gift she gave me, which was an incredible sense of humor. So I want to do it in that way, to bring real life, I guess, to the story, that what it means in some funny ways as well, because we need, life is not, there's a lot of joy in life. It's not all about the sadness. And so that's the goal of my book, is to bring that.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm so excited about your book. And for somebody who is listening to this, especially people who lost their moms, what they need to hear right now.
There's so many things that we need to hear, because losing your mom really is, like I've said, losing your mom, it changes your world. It changes everything that you knew, that you would emulate your mom in a lot of cases. I mean, not all daughter mother relationships are great, but you lose that connection, and it is central to our sense of who we are, of who we will become. And I think what we need is a reassurance that our feelings are valid. That is very much what excuse me, what we need to hear is that. And we need permission. We need permission for the emotions to be able to come forward. And that is very difficult sometimes, because moms, in most families, moms are the one that holds families together, and the mom is kind of the rock of the family. And you need to hear, I think what I needed to hear, that for her leaving somehow wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. But I think a big thing that daughters need to know is that you are not responsible to take on that role that your mom had. That is not your responsibility to do that. I did that. And not because my dad asked me to do that. He had wanted me to continue, and I was only 18. I was going away to school to start doing that, but I put the pressure on myself to play that role. But and in many cases that happens, but it's not it's not your responsibility to take on that role, and it's not your responsibility to care for everybody, which is what a mom normally does. Right. And it's normal to feel guilt after like I felt after your mom is gone. But acknowledging that pain is such a necessary step towards healing. But just don't let others' expectations of how you should be as the daughter. I was, the daughter that was at home. So all of that pressure I felt. I had younger siblings, so I felt all of that pressure. But just don't allow people to tell you that you now have to take on that role, because you have your own role. You're still a daughter. You still have that own role to play in your life. You don't have to play the role of the mother.
That's a powerful message. Like, we put so much pressures on ourselves,
You do.
and it's really, really hard, especially if you're going through such a painful state and you're putting another pressure on you is really, it's so hard.
Yes.
Marie, if you could talk to your mom, what do you think she would say to you right now?
What she would say to me, and I think I'm very accurate in what she would say to me, is that I think she would say that she's very proud of the work that I'm doing. I think that she would, knowing my mom and how kind and compassionate she was, and involved in so many things, that if the roles were reversed, she would be doing this kind of work. So I think she would say that she's very proud. I also think she would say, which is what I was told once from a psychic that she said, was that she was sorry that she had to go, and that she understood my anger towards her for the longest time. That was okay, that I was angry towards her. It was okay to feel that way, but that she was sorry that she had to leave.
Beautiful message. Um, for somebody who's listening to this interview and they're going through really painful process right now, grieving, what message would you want to give to them?
The message that I would want to give to anyone is just allow. Grief is a process. Grief is a journey. It is not. There's not an end that we're looking for. We will grieve. You will grieve your whole life. I've grieved for my mom since I was 18 years old. I've grieved for all my losses. But that's okay. That's okay, because loss is a part of life. And grief, we can't have loss without grief. Those go together. If you've loved, and if you've lost, and if you've lived any time at all, you've loved. And if you've lost, you're going to grieve that loss. But there is life after loss. There is life after loss, and I am I never thought that I would get over some of my losses, and I am living proof that there indeed is life after loss. I don't believe that death has the ability to take away our relationships, to take away our love, and to take away our hope for the future. Death doesn't have the ability to do that. And that there is, I say hope is where I have an acronym that I can't even think now what it was, what hope is. Hope is pain ends, is what it hanging on, pain will end. And grief is gradually returning into everyday functioning, is what grief means for me. And so, but it is a process. It's something that we have to go through. We can't get around grief. There's no magic formula to go through it. You can't go through it. You can't go over it. You just have to go with what grief is, and feel those feelings, and feel that pain. And it's perfectly okay. What you're feeling is normal. What you're feeling is normal. Whatever your feelings are, they are normal. And it is all part of the grieving process. And don't try and diminish your feelings, and don't be scared to feel those feelings, because it is all part of the healing process.
Don't be afraid to feel. That's all part of the grieving process, of the healing process. Marie, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and knowledge and your experience with us. Thank you so much for that. I feel truly honored that this was your first ever interview. And thank you so much for being on my show today. If people want to connect with you, how they can find you.
Well, I don't have a website. I have a Facebook group. It's called Gidge Gets Grief. And but I'm on LinkedIn, and anyone can reach me on my Facebook page as well. I have some trainings coming up. I have some different things that I'm working on. But yeah, so those are the best ways to connect with me.
Thank you so much, Marie, for being on my podcast today. And everybody who's watching or listening to this, if this episode inspired you, moved you, touched you, please share this with friends and family members because we heal together. Thank you so much for everything. Until next time, be brave, shine your light because the world needs that love and light inside of you more than ever. I'm sending you lots of love and big hug. Bye for now.